Jack the Ripper was one of the most notorious serial killers in history. He's blamed for the deaths of at least 5 London prostitutes in 1888. Tonight, there's a possible new clue in that case. Self-described armchair detective Russell Edwards says a trace of DNA from one victim's shawl has finally revealed the murderer's identity. He says the DNA is from Aaron Comiskey, a 23-year-old Polish immigrant and an original suspect.
And to get DNA from the material on there, from both the killer and the victim, has been phenomenal. And to have it matched is amazing. I'm 100% certain. Definitive proof, conclusively proven, put the case to bed.
Edwards bought the blood-stained shawl at an auction in 2007. He then asked a forensic scientist to analyze it. Edwards has a book coming out on the subject tomorrow called Naming Jack the Ripper. Mehul Anjaria is a forensic DNA consultant who's worked with law enforcement on homicide cases and joins us tonight. Mehul, welcome.
Hello, John. Good to be with you on the program.
Well, it's good to be with you. How surprising and how likely is it that DNA survived on this cloth so long?
Well, it's not necessarily surprising that some level of DNA survived on the cloth. The real question is that the results that were obtained, are they actually from DNA that was deposited back in 1888?
So what can more than a century of wear and tear do to a piece of evidence, and to this investigation?
Well, there's really 2 variables to this investigation. Number one, time is the enemy of DNA. With time, the DNA will degrade and break down, and there will be less of it to analyze. But maybe the bigger problem in this case is the authenticity of this piece of evidence. Certainly in 1888, it wasn't preserved for DNA testing, and we certainly don't have good records of where this shawl has been over the last 126 years. So with DNA testing as sensitive as it is, if somebody handled that shawl with their hand or stood over it and perspired on it or was talking over it, you could pick up that DNA as well. So as I said in the beginning, to me the real question is the DNA that was detected recently, is that from 1888 or is that more recent? And DNA technology really cannot put a timestamp on DNA profiles that are analyzed in the laboratory.
What do you think?
Well, I think as a scientist reading all the news articles today, there's actually more questions than answers. And there are a number of things that would have to be vetted before I would really even offer an opinion on this. Certainly, it could be legit. I wouldn't rule that out.
Can you reliably narrow, though, this sort of forensic technique? And how reliable is it in identifying a suspect, one suspect?
Well, this is one of the problems, is that we don't know the exact technique, and not all DNA analysis is the same. Some of it, of course, is very powerful, and we hear in cases that the crime scene evidence match a suspect, and that evidence would be expected to be found in 1 in 38 quadrillion people, meaning that it's almost individualizing the profile, but we don't know that that was the technology that was used. From what I read, a specified type of technology called mitochondrial DNA was used, and we know for a fact that that is not as discriminating as the classic DNA testing.
Well, how do they trace it back then, so far?
Well, yeah, so the good news about mitochondrial DNA testing is that all maternal relatives will have the same mitochondrial DNA profile. So this is why it's useful for historical investigations. So by looking at descendants of the victim in the case, as well as Comiskey, you can compare their mitochondrial DNA with any mitochondrial DNA that was found on the shawl and see if they agree.
Why do you think there's such intrigue with this murder?
Well, I think there's been so much folklore passed down over the years. I think the fact that it's unsolved is very sexy to people. And I think that the DNA is going to be met with a lot of doubt simply because it came back to one of the likely suspects. And that kind of takes away from the romance of the story.
Mehul Anjaria, it's good to have you on the program. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.